All right. Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Thanks for joining another episode of Getting Fit with Rob. This is the Getting Fit in 60-Day Transformation. And today we're going to talk about carbohydrates and why they're vital to your body and how they help you actually lose fat and help you burn fat. And it all is going to be framed around the theme of long-term results instead of short-term results. Okay, so carbohydrates, if you cut them out in the short term for a few days, yeah, you'll see a drop in weight. Usually it's because you're not storing water, and it's usually water weight. Okay, but I'm talking about 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. Now our bodies naturally crave carbohydrates. It's just the way it is. And if we were to cut out all carbohydrates forever, there's something missing that the body desperately needs. Okay, and then you'll end up just going back to carbohydrates in a worse way, and you'll be in a worse situation. So what we can do is we can manage the carbohydrates and use them effectively and incorporate them into our life, but in a balanced, decent way. Now, carbohydrates can be slightly dangerous or overused, and that's where they become a problem. So long as we're not overusing carbohydrates, but we're incorporating them into our life in a smaller, balanced way, they will be very powerful. Cutting them out all completely is extremely, it's not very productive. It's anti-productive. It actually will make things worse. Your body naturally craves them because they provide instant energy. Okay, so let's get into this. If we could, as long as we're aware of what carbohydrates do for us and how they can be overused and how they can be underused, then we can take advantage of them without actually gaining weight, and it'll help us burn muscle. Let me explain. First of all, we have 3 types of carbohydrates. Okay, first type is simple sugars. We get that from processed food like a chocolate bar or ice cream. Yes, we don't want those. Those ones you can cut out. Okay, we don't want those. The other 2 are fibrous carbohydrates and starchy carbohydrates. Let's talk about fibrous. Fibrous would be things like broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus. We want lots of those because they help us feel full and they're packed with fiber. So I always say have 2 fists of colorful vegetables on your plate for lunch and dinner. It'll help you stay full and it has nutrients. Okay, so then the third one is what can cause problems, because the third one is actually hard to feel satisfied with. If you eat a lot of them, you need a lot of them to feel satisfied. Like protein, if you have a big fistful of protein, usually you feel satisfied. So this is where starchy carbohydrates can come into play, but they're actually very helpful. Things like, when I'm talking about starchy carbs, I'm talking about potatoes, sweet potato, whole grain, oatmeal, things like that. Okay, whole grains. I always say have a fistful on your plate, and that should do the trick. And the reason is those carbohydrates will go into your muscle, your body converts it into energy, and it gets stored into glycogen. Glycogen is just it just goes into your muscle, and your muscles are like a fuel tank, okay? And then when you go and lift a weight, the instant energy comes from the muscle. It depletes the glycogen out of the muscle. Okay, so in other words, basically carbohydrates are like instant energy for the body. So why is that good? Because if we have energy to build muscles, then muscles it'll be easier to build more muscle. And if we can build more muscle, we'll have bigger tanks. And when we have bigger fuel tanks, then we can hold more carbohydrates, and then so we can have more energy. So in other words, let's just simplify it. Carbohydrates help you build muscle, and muscle helps you burn fat because muscle is very metabolic. Okay, so there is a place for carbohydrates in your diet. Now, if you're the type of person who does not want carbohydrates at all, and you've cut it out completely, and you've been able to do it for years, every day, you've never touched it for years, and it works for you, great. But what I'm telling you is most likely is going to help the most people is get some carbohydrates in your system, and this will help you sustain and maintain and be sane for the next 10 years. Long-term results. Like I eat a lot of carbohydrates. I have very low body fat because it all gets stored in my muscle. Okay. And that's what you can start doing as well. So there is a place for it. Hopefully that makes sense. And we want to make sure. So just remember the general rule. Let me explain it this way. Let me use my diagram here. Hopefully you can see this diagram. It's probably backwards in the video, but this pie, this is my plate. This is your plate, okay? For lunch and dinner, let's start with lunch and dinner. So you're first going to fill up your plate with protein, okay? That's the first thing you're going to put on your plate. Then you're going to put this half a plate is all fibrous vegetables, so colorful vegetables, and you want 2 fistfuls for portioning. And then you finally have a slice there for your starchy carbohydrate. And that's how you should be filling up your plate. And that way you won't get into trouble. We get into trouble when we just cook a huge amount of carbohydrates, put it all on the plate, and that's all we eat. And it's taking up the most. That's where it starts to get overused, and it will start to cause problems for you. And it's natural. It's natural because carbohydrates tend to, it's ingrained in our DNA. We go for carbohydrates because they're instant energy and they generally taste better. Excuse me. So let's incorporate it, but don't over abuse it. And by doing that, if you use the portion tool, it'll be much better. And then in the long run, it'll help you build muscle, which will help you burn fat, and you'll feel much better, and it'll help you sustain for the long term. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. And question me or send me messages or comment if you have any questions about that, okay? All right. Hopefully that helps. I'll talk to you later.